And a good evening to you, and a happy Easter, if you celebrated it. I'm here. It's been a couple days. I didn't stream Friday, because I was on a podcast around 9 p.m. on Friday, and it kind of took a lot out of me, so I was like, I'm not going to stream. And then I didn't stream yesterday because I was busy, and then today I ended up not streaming because of stuff all the way till now. Like, I was going to stream earlier, but it didn't happen. I don't seem to be dropping frames, but I also don't seem to be... Okay, yeah, looks like it's all fine here. Okay, give me 1 second. I actually started and stopped recording because I was like, oh, fuck something up. So let me close that. Put this over here. Okay. Yep, sorry. I'm a little out of it right now. You give me a few minutes, a few moments. Okay. Alright, here we are. So, things are gonna be tight this week. After today, I only have 2 days to stream before I have to leave for pretty much most of the week. So my goal is to finish Chapter 2 tonight, which will happen because there's not much left. And then, blow through as much of Chapter 3 as I can today. Tomorrow, I probably am gonna be starting streaming around this time again. So I'll try to get as much of Chapter 3 done as I can, and then hopefully Tuesday I could pull off a little bit of a longer stream and finish it up. I can't really stream Wednesday, but I'll go into detail about that a little later. But yeah, so we're resuming from the end of Chapter 2 of the second game here. We have determined that there's a lot of gas fuckery going around, and that Olive Green may have poisoned the pipe somehow, despite being in a coma. So, no clue what that's about, but, or no clue how that's gonna happen. But, we'll figure it out tonight. I really wish and hope that she is, not the culprit. Even if she didn't technically kill anyone. Alright, 1 more second here. Actually, I'm gonna do sound check real quick. Okay, perfect. Alright, 1 sec. I'm feeling like a little bit out of it because today, as I mentioned, was Easter, and in true Easter fashion, I am absolutely fucking stuffed. I can barely move right now. I'm gonna try to limit myself to just a single drink. Well, a single drink to get me through the stream. If I need more, I can't drink more. I need more Arnold Palmer. It is available to me. Okay. Alright, wow. I've been talking for 5 minutes and we haven't started yet. Alright. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again now. Before the recess, we heard a most startling accusation from the defense. Namely, that the victim of the case we heard here only a few days ago was the true perpetrator of this incident. A reckless, rash, and prejudiced charge of wrongdoing, in my opinion, my lord. However, the prosecution has tried to extend every courtesy to this amateur newcomer from dubious eastern shores. Thank you for that backhanded consideration. A rather cold assessment from the honorable British prosecutor, I must say. So Lord Van Zeeks is the new witness present and ready to take the stand? Ready and waiting in the witness's antechamber, my lord. Very well. Bailiff, bring the witness in. Witnesses, excuse me. There's more than one. Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court, please. William Shamspeare, my liege. For mine occupation, I can say only that I be a tragic victim, to be pitied. Currently unemployed, in other words. I'm Olive Green. I'm a fledgling artist. Well, no. Not a fledgling, really. A hopeless failure who's too weak-spirited to admit she has no talent, I suppose. Also currently unemployed, in other words. What a coterie. I don't know what that word means. Coterie? Mr. Shamspeare. My lord, I am thy humble servant. I'm afraid that you are no longer merely the victim in this affair. The possibility has been raised that you are in fact the assailant intent on taking the life of your fellow lodger. The part you have played in this whole business will be thoroughly scrutinized, I assure you. I would for naught else, my lord. And Miss Green? Yes? You are aware of the reason you have been summoned to this courtroom today, I presume? Yes, the officer did explain. He said I poisoned this ridiculous buffoon. And, do you accept the charge, Miss Green? I don't know anything about any poisoning. And I don't know anything about this man. Come, lady, die to live. Verily I know not thy prickly, pea-pigmented personage. Very well, let us proceed with the matter at hand. That being to ascertain whether or not Miss Green has any involvement in this affair. It's all very strange indeed. Why would you suspect me? I barely ever go to the East End anyway. It so happens that I passed by that neighborhood 6 days ago. That's all. And on the night that this man was poisoned, I was still in hospital, fighting for my life. Yes, having been unfortunately caught up in the incident on the street outside the Garrideb household. An incident that rendered you unconscious. An incident that rendered you unconscious for some 3 days. I was struck in the middle of my back by a knife, though no fault of my own, and now I'm under suspicion? What other irrelevant things might I be suspected of? It's all very disturbing. Your energies may be better spent worrying about random knife attacks, I feel, Miss Green. At this point in time, all that appears to connect you with Mr. Shamspeare's lodgings is the Briar Road incident of 6 days ago. That's why we would like you to testify formally now about exactly what happened. Oh no, the incident 6 days ago? You mean you want me to relive that awful incident? Unfortunately, yes. Please tell the court what happened that day. And of course, we will be interested to hear from your movements about that day too, Mr. Shamspeare. But what happened 6 days ago has nothing to do with me being poisoned. Let us proceed then. The witnesses will present their formal testimony to the court on the subject of the incident that took place on Briar Road the evening of the 17th of February. Oh yeah, we need knowledge of the first case for this. The first game. The evening of 17th February. It was 6 days ago at about 5 p.m. I was walking along in the snow when I suddenly was stabbed in the back. Coincidentally, it just happened to be outside the house where the men in this case have their lodgings. I was at the tavern on the eve of which thou speakest, for I had bespoke my supper. It was the first time I'd been in the area. I had a little matter to attend to, that's all. Anyway, I was admitted straight to the hospital, so I knew nothing about all of this business. Yes, a second incident inside a week, at what I believe to be aptly described as the haunted lodgings. One can only presume this is a most unfortunate coincidence. 1 second. Get rid of that. I accidentally made 2 video files here. There we go. Meanwhile, you say you were not in your room, Mr. Shamspeare. 'Twas the following morn when I did awaken that I learned of the dire events. Mary, what a commotion did the officers of the law make on the floor above mine! When Soseki-san was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. As suspected, there is nothing connecting these two witnesses but happenstance. It's true, it does seem as though they're unrelated at first glance, but I'm not so sure. There's something lurking in the shadows here, I feel certain of it. And this is my one and only chance to expose it. Expose it. Expose it. Counsel, you may now cross-examine these two witnesses if you wish. Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord. Despite me feeling weird and full today, I am satisfied because I finished all my auditions finally. My queue is at long last completely empty, and just in time. And just in time. Oop, and just in time because I'm not gonna have time to do auditions next week. Probably not gonna have time to do auditions until I get back from the second trip. Oh man. Okay, cross-examining. Coincidentally happened to be just outside the house of the men of the lodgings. I said the tavern on the eve which thou speakest, for I bespoke my supper. It was the first time I'd been in the area. I had little matter to attend to, that's all. Anyway, I was admitted straight to the hospital, so I knew nothing about all this business. Oops, wrong button. I'm gonna press this one. A tavern, you say? Which one? 'Twas the Slug and Salad where I did tarry. 'Tis a jewel in the East End. And a little unexpected, I feel. What do you mean, Lord Van Zeeks? The Slug and Salad offers unusually fine dining, for the locality, at least. Not an establishment you'd expect to be patronized by a man with not even a crumb of bread in his room. It's true, the menu lists premium crusts of bread and glasses of water, in different levels of cloudiness. I would have expected Grubb's Grubbery in the local vicinity to be more appropriate for your means. Watery soup and mushy peas, or rather, soupy water and pea-like mush. All equally appetizing. I just wanted to try some water in a different pub for once. What's wrong with that? How different can water really be? Or perhaps there's a more plausible explanation. A specific reason why he had to go to that particular establishment. Agreed. The fact that on that day of all days he dined at a place he wouldn't normally, it does stand out. So Mr. Shamspeare's own actions on the day of the incident 6 days... So Mr. Shamspeare's own actions on the day of the incident 6 days ago were slightly suspicious. I wonder if we have some evidence that can explain these actions. Mr. Shamspeare... Yes, sire? On the day in question, is it not the case that you visited the Slug and Salad, a place you don't normally patronize, for a very particular reason? I don't know what you're talking about. Pray, if thou hast some purpose, speakest. Very well, I will present the court with evidence. Evidence that explains why you had to be at the Slug and Salad that day, namely... I think I fucked up. I think I needed it. I don't think I have the evidence, actually. I think I know where to get it, though. Take that! Oh, good Horatio. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Horatio? I believe it's a line from Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, Mr. Naruhodo. Be it a line from a great Shakespeare or from this, Mr. Shamspeare, the message is the same. My learned Nipponese friend is wide of the mark. Hardly surprising given this witness's obtuse literary quotes. I do wonder if there isn't perhaps some evidence that would explain why it was the Slug and Salad he visited. I think we've discussed this issue enough. Let us return to the witness's testimony, please. Gladly I would thy bidding do, Horatio.
Hold it!
A little matter to attend to, eh? Yeah. What's this little matter, Miss Green? Please elaborate. Oh. It was nothing, really. It's not worth mentioning. If you remember, you mentioned it to us yesterday at the hospital. Ah. It was related to the card you were holding. Miss Green! Oh wait, why am I reading I don't read the flashback stuff. From memory, I believe the card contained a note that read, I have information regarding the death of Duncan Ross. What does that matter? This has nothing to do with Duncan.
Excuse me.
Mr. Shamspear, do you have something to share with the court? To be or not to be, that is the question. Ah, pray forgive me. The great bard's words springeth from within me with nearer thought. Don't tell me. It's because you're possessed by Shakespeare's spirit, right? Hearing Miss Green's words a moment ago seemed to make you think of something. Something of relevance, perhaps? Well, nay, sire. 'Twas nothing at all. Presumably you know the name, though. Mr. Duncan Ross, I mean. After all, you were both lodgers in the same house. I would it were so, but sadly nay. Lodging be a lonely occupation, sire. My lodging fellows be rarely known to me. So you haven't heard of him, even though he passed away in the room just one floor above yours? Miss Green? Me, my lord? What have I done something wrong? The card that was mentioned before, containing the note, do you have it upon your person? I do, yes, but I don't need it anymore. In fact, I should throw it away, really. Before you dispose of it, the court will take it as evidence, please. Of course, that's what links Mr. Shamspear and Miss Green. It's Duncan Ross. Now, continue with your testimony, please, Miss Green. Oops. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, you must pursued Mr. Shamspear wonderfully there. It's worked out well, hasn't it? We have a new clue at last. Alright, now I need to pull off a really insightful objection somewhere. Well, as you've managed to expose this promising new angle, I wonder if you should perhaps try to develop that. Ah, yes, of course. And yelling out objections isn't necessarily the best way to do that, I suppose.
Hold it!
Yes, present that evidence, baby. Let's go. The envelope has been ripped open rather carelessly, hasn't it? Miss Green strikes me as the type to open correspondence more neatly than that. Ah. What is it? The way the envelope is torn, I'm almost sure I've seen that exact shape somewhere else. Oh, you don't mean... Were you thinking of this piece of evidence, Mr. Naruhodo? Exactly, that's it. Try to match them up. They go together perfectly. This torn-off end of the envelope clearly belongs to this card. Note in the envelope that seems to have been ripped open rather roughly. The envelope fits perfectly with the torn-off piece found at the crime scene. Fits perfectly with an envelope in Miss Green's possession. Alright, well that's all we need to know there.
Take that!
I believe this card reveals the answer. Good lord, Miss Green's card, you mean? That's right, my lord. It reads, I have information regarding the death of Duncan Ross. Come to the Slug and Salad on Briar Road at 5 p.m. on the 17th. Don't tell anybody else about this letter or the meeting. It is a matter of utmost importance. Mr. Shamspear, your actions on the afternoon of Miss Green's stabbing are exactly as described in this note. Uh-huh. Yeah. Personally, I find it hard to believe that's a coincidence. Don't you, Mr. Shamspear? Well... Excuse me, can I say something? Yes, Miss Green? That card was delivered to me. It doesn't have anything to do with this odd man, does it? Well, you'd think so, yes, but it's hard to believe it's merely... My lord, may I? May you what, Miss Green? I'd like to make something very clear about that card. Very well, then. You may amend your testimony to include details about the peculiar note. This note was delivered to me at my address. It has nothing to do with the odd man next to me here.
Objection!
The day before the incident, exactly 1 week ago now, this note was delivered to your address, and upon carrying out the instructions in the note, you found yourself in the hospital. Yes, I did. It's terrible, everything that's happened to me. Yes, it is terrible. If it's all true, that is. What do you mean? Miss Green, have a look at this, please. It's the torn-off end of an envelope. Oh, is it? And it so happens that it fits together perfectly with the envelope of the note you received. Where did you find that? In Mr. Shamspear's room. In my room? Holy crap. Did she... Wait a minute. Did she not actually get stabbed with a knife? She did that herself, didn't she? Like, she set this up. Oh, man. Oh, man. Mr. Shamspear, do you perhaps remember this note from somewhere? Well... Your actions that afternoon follow the instructions in the note to the letter. Come to the Slug and Salad on Briar Road at 5 p.m. on the 17th. And so that's exactly where you went. Let me ask you again, Mr. Shamspear. You already knew about this note, didn't you? And you, Miss Green. What did I do? As this torn-off end of the envelope proves, the note was originally in Mr. Shamspear's room. So how is it that it came to be in your possession? I don't have the first idea. I'm just a fledgling artist, after all. There's only one explanation. You broke into Mr. Shamspear's room and stole it. You did what? Sorry, thou hast what? You broke... thou were in my room? What on earth do you want with me? It would seem that both witnesses need to testify again. Miss Green. Yes? Whilst you have the court's sympathy, I'm sure, for the suffering you have endured in recent events, anyone found to be giving false testimony in a court of law will be duly punished. Please bear that in mind. Yes, I know. Very well then, witnesses. You will give formal testimony again now. On the subject of this curious anomaly regarding the note Miss Green claims to have received. The anomaly of the note. I do remember now. 'Twas a week ago, peradventure, that note was delivered unto me. On the day writ therein, I did tarry a long hour at the Slug and Salad, yet nobody came. Thereafter, on the evening I shared the company of the Japanese fellow, I did see the note had vanished. I don't know what you mean. You think I snuck into this man's room, do you? Why would I? I get point out the villain here, and as for the torn-off piece of envelope, I don't know anything about it. You now claim to have received this letter, do you, Mr. Shamspear? Faith, 'tis so, my lord, and I would swear to have it set upon the table in my humble lodgings. Yet, 'tis clear to me now that since I returned from that tavern that night, I have not laid eyes upon it. Well, that being the case, young lady, it would appear that your testimony was a lie? Is that what you think? How unfair of you to think I'm the one lying. I beg your pardon. I'm just a fledgling artist, as I said, and fledgling artists don't lie. That note was delivered to me at my address. Besides, we all know who the liar around here is. If that's true, Miss Green, how do you explain the facts? This part of the envelope was, without question, found in Mr. Shamspear's room. I don't see why I should explain. Sorry? I'm a fledgling artist. My job here is to say what just happened. That's all. It's your job to give the explanations and the proofs. You, the fledgling lawyer. The fledgling will do his best. Evidently, my learned friend's cross-examination is our only hope of learning the truth. Well, counsel? I'm ready, my lord. I'm ready. Very well, then. The defense will now proceed with the cross-examination of the witnesses. The witnesses. Miss Green certainly did break into Mr. Shamspear's room. There can be no question of that. And that's how she acquired the note. Yes, two facts that are starting to lead me to a possible explanation for all of this. And it's not a pretty one. Whee! I do remember now, 'twas a week ago. The note was delivered unto me. On the day written therein, I did tarry a long hour at the Slug and Salad, yet nobody came. Thereafter, on the evening issue of the company, which I could see the note had vanished. I don't know what you mean. You think I snuck into this man's room, do you? Why would I? I can point out the villain here, and that's I don't know anything about it. But,
Hold it!
So even after waiting an hour, nobody appeared? Well, yes, sire, 'tis as though thou sayest. Really? You paused for a moment before you answered. In truth, when thou asked whether nobody appeared, I did suddenly recall... Really? Do you mean to tell the court that somebody did appear after all? I was not alone that night in the Slug and Salad, my lord, no. 'Tis returning to me now. I did treat my lips to almost clear water, and mine innards to a premium crust of bread. And all around me danced a many great companions. What do you mean? Flies, sire, flies. Good lord! In the name of Beelzebub, what were they? Fairies, perchance, from a midsummer night's dream, come to taunt me? I think they were just flies. I can't help but think that flies ought to choose something more wholesome to buzz around. Is that wrong of me? My back kinda hurts. Ugh.
Hold it!
Hold it! And can you shed any light on the contents of the note at all? Nay, sire, 'tis as strange to me as a foreign tongue. Even with a knowledge of literature as great as mine own, verily, 'tis impenetrable. But Mr. Duncan Ross had lodgings in the same household as you. In effect, he was your neighbor, so surely you knew him, didn't you? Alack, if the choices be twixt I knew him, and I knew him not, then 'tis with foreboding that I be forced to declare we were by some small measure acquainted. Despite your claims, though, you followed the note's instructions and went to the Slug and Salad. Presumably that was nothing to do with your knowledge of literature? Marry, naught will have thought better of me, sire, save for the lure of curiosity. So 'tis true, I was compelled by mine own eager heart to betake myself to the tavern. Yet in the end, my curiosity was not satiated. Which one of them wrote this damn note?
Hold it!
When exactly did you notice it had gone missing? Such idle thoughts ne'er occupy my mind. I am busied with greater ideas. In other words, you didn't notice. Several days passed between your outing to the tavern and Mr. Natsume's visit to your room. Yes, it would appear that the note disappeared sometime in that interval. Such idle thoughts ne'er occupy my mind. I am busied with greater ideas. And yet during that time, Miss Green was comatose in the hospital, was she not? Clearly then, she could not have been stealing things from Mr. Shamspeare's room. Yes, of course. It's all some sort of misunderstanding, isn't it, Mr. Prosecutor, sir? You have so far failed to give a satisfactory explanation as to how you came by the note. I am not here to advocate for your defense, madam. I won't tolerate inconsistencies in your story. You would do well to remember that. Oh, dearie me. What's Lord Van Zeek's getting at? I don't know what you mean. You think I snuck into this man's room, do you? Why would I?
Hold it!
It seems this note was actually delivered to Mr. Shamspeare about 1 week ago. Oh, does it? But for some reason, it ended up in your possession. I can't think of any way that could have happened except for you breaking into Mr. Shamspeare's lodgings.
Objection!
But for what reason would the witness have done that? I won't deny that Miss Green's possession of the note would appear to defy logic. However, until and unless her involvement in this case can be proven in some other way, any further pursuit of this note is meaningless. Miss Green could have only come to be in possession of that note by stealing it from Mr. Shamspeare's room. And yet, there's no obvious reason why she would have done such a thing. Or if there was some other reason she broke into his lodgings, though. Yes, we should pursue that idea, Mr. Naruhodo. We're close now. I can feel it. We're close to a breakthrough. Breakthrough? Blah, 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 blah.
Hold it!
So you don't want to tell the court the truth about the letter, is that it? I'm a fledgling artist, remember? Artists are nearly always introverted characters. Introverted? Fie! This fledgling doth readily cast aspersions about my nature. And yet I'm an angel, a seraph. Birds do harmonize with my song. The wind doth frolic on my wing. Oh, pity. Wherefore dost thou accuse me, one of pure... Wherefore dost thou accuse one of so pure of heart, ample woman? Is he doing like 1890s flossing? What is this move that he's doing? I don't like it. Pure of heart? I don't think so. Even a fledgling like me could see you're a failure. Tragedy, thou shalt not know the true heart of an artist until thine instruction hereafter by death. Oh, the days, oh, the years, alas, to enlighten thee. Thou must wait so long and in vain. Mr. Naruhodo, interject with some clever remark. This is your chance to shine. I'm no Shakespearean actor, Mrs. Sato. No, as far as I can tell, the only thing that's going to resolve this argument is evidence. Yes! It's clear that Miss Green did in fact break into Mr. Shamspeare's room, isn't it? And that's where she found this letter. Yes, two more or less foregone conclusions that lead to one terrifying conclusion. Terrifying? Yes, I'm afraid to say that the outcome of this cross-examination may well change how we look at this case completely. Okay, so what do I actually have to present here? Oh, you think I suck in this man's room? Yeah, brr.
Objection!
Yeah, I guess it's gotta be the poison. It's gotta be the poison, bro! Time to take my first sip of Arnold Palmer for the night. Naruhodo, why are you drinking from that bottle? Oh, God! It just keels over. Wump. Okay. Yesterday at the hospital, we saw you with this bottle. And though the contents spilt during the course of our meeting, a small quantity remained. According to the defense's independent analysis, Mr. Sholmes' chemistry set, the liquid that was still in the bottle was identified as strychnine. What? Strychnine? The very same poison that afflicted Mr. Shamspear. Miss Green, you broke into this man's lodgings for one reason and one reason alone. To cover the end of the pipe that feeds gas lamp in Mr. to cover the end of the pipe that feeds the gas lamp in Mr. Shamspear's room with poison. Can this be? You broke into my room to... It may seem incredible to the court, but from the remaining clues, there is only one logical conclusion that we can reach. The person who attempted to take Mr. Shamspear's life with poison was you, Miss Olive Green. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dearie. Me! Oh, order! Counsel, are you seriously suggesting that this woman put poison on the end of the gas pipe with intent to kill? Yes, my lord. There's no other way to explain the facts. But if Miss Green did indeed set upon this odious trap 6 days ago, and the victim had put his mouth to the pipe that very evening as expected, the attempted murder would have happened 6 days ago, surely. Well, that's a very good point. Perhaps not, my lord. I beg your pardon? There was a significant police presence in the area that evening on account of the incident on Briar Road. Local residents were being interviewed throughout the night as part of the ongoing inquiry. A circumspect criminal would likely have chosen not to carry out any wrongdoing at that time. Lord Van Zieks. And of course, the following morning there was more activity at Mr. Shamspear's address. More activity? Ah, yes. You mean his fellow lodger, Mr. Natsume, being arrested on suspicion of murder? That's right. And as the defense has already proposed, Mr. Shamspear was meddling with the gas pipe for a very sinister reason himself. To cause the gas stove in Mr. Natsume's room to go out, thereby asphyxiating the occupant. But once Mr. Natsume had been arrested, his room was under constant surveillance by the police. In the circumstances, Mr. Shamspear had no reason to blow air into the gas pipe. His intended victim being in a prison cell. With the need to tamper with the gas removed, the poison lay on the pipe dormant. And then, 3 days ago now, the situation changed again. Right. Mr. Natsume's trial, which took place here at the Old Bailey, came to an end. The trial in which the man stood accused of stabbing Miss Green in the back, but was duly acquitted. I don't know why he suddenly had Van Ziek's voice. That resulted in Mr. Natsume returning to his lodgings for the first time in 2 days. And that very night, his gas stove mysteriously went out, and Mr. Shamspear was mysteriously poisoned. In conclusion, the poison that was present on the mouth of the gas pipe had been put there in the victim's room some 4 days earlier. Mary! With that new understanding, it becomes clear that this letter was all part of the plan. What plan? The court will recall that the note gave instructions to visit the Slug and Style at 5 o'clock, and that the recipient should tell nobody else. The reason for those instructions are now clear. To ensure that the lodger would not be at home at the stated time. To make sure I wasn't home. Exactly. While you were out, Miss Green could safely slip into your room, knowing that she wouldn't be disturbed. You mean to say that letter was written by Miss Green, yes. And in order to cover her tracks, She took it away with her when she left. Just after she smeared poison over the mouth of the gas pipe in your room. Order, order! What do you have to say for yourself, witness? Just who are you? Why did you try to kill me? Miss Green's motive should be obvious. It's all tied up with someone whose name we've heard several times already during the course of this trial. So, that's what's behind all this. You will share your apparent understanding with the court, please, counsel. Which person is behind this woman's motive for the attack on the victim's life?
Take that!
Duncan Ross. That's right. Before the defendant, Mr. Natsume, took up residence in the lodgings at Mr. Garadeb's, somebody else was renting out the room. Mr. Duncan Ross. I knew I'd heard the name somewhere else. It was all over the papers a month ago, when the man died in strange circumstances at the haunted lodgings. It does ring a vague... of course, yes, I remember now. The young man they claimed was strangled by the convict's curse or some such. Sadly, my lord, it wasn't a curse of any kind, nor was it an accident. The man died as a result of Mr. Shamspeare blowing into the gas pipe and causing gas to leak into the room. It was murder, plain and simple. Well, what do you know? The world is so unfair. Curious deaths. That's curses. Curious deaths. That's all people care about. If it's an interesting story, they want to know. It doesn't cross their minds that real people are involved. And once they're bored, just 1 month later, once the story's lost its appeal, everyone's forgotten him. You mean you... Duncan was... Mr. Ross was Miss Green's fiancé. Fiancé? You may have not known until now who Miss Green really is, Mr. Shamspeare. But she's known exactly who you are all along. Because you're her sworn enemy. The murderer who took the life of the man she was to marry. Marry? Miss Green, is it not the case that in order to exact revenge on Mr. Shamspeare, you smeared poison over the end of the gas pipe? This is all quite extraordinary. Am I correct in my understanding that you now accuse both parties, counsel? Each on different counts of murder? Yes, my lord, that's correct.
Objection!
Inhaling so deeply, it appears that my fledgling learned friend has taken in a lungful of dubious gas that's causing his judgment to be clouded. Why would Mr. Shamspeare have wanted to kill these lodgers, as you say? You've completely failed to provide a motive to substantiate your accusation against the man. Yes, that's right, Mr. Reaper, my liege. I have been slighted. 'Tis lies, all lies, I deny every utterance. And you'll have to forgive me, Mr. Naruhodo, sir. But I don't intend to admit to anything either. Miss Green, I'm sure you'll think I'm being very rude, but I'm not going to be sent to the gallows for the likes of this scoundrel.
Objection!
But you broke into the man's room. If you didn't do it to smear poison on the pipe, what was your reason? I thought I'd have a look around, that's all. Sorry? You're right. I suspected him. So I thought perhaps I might find some evidence or something in his room. Evidence that it was him who took Duncan's life. Oh vileness, oh villainy, oh tyranny, oh roundity of women. Rotundity. Roundity? I mean, it's the same, it was the same meaning, but... But in any case, whenever I leave the room, I do turn the key in the lock. That whole place is falling apart. The locks on the doors are no different. Duncan showed me once how to unlock the door, with some terps and a piece of wire. Terps. Oh awfulness, oh tyranny, oh profanity of woman! Roundity. Oh, roundity of woman. We will consider your trespassing on some future occasion, but for now, tell the court what you found, what evidence your search revealed. Well, I spotted the note that I'd sent him lying on the floor. When I went to pick it up, I noticed something. Oh, she just admitted to sending the note. One of the floorboards was loose, and underneath it, I discovered a secret hiding place. Eh? Yes, we also discovered that hiding place. Inside, we found a newspaper cutting, a photograph, and an empty tin box. Oh, yes, well, the thing is, when I found it, the box wasn't empty. What? There was something in it? Yes. This rather nice key. What are you doing with that? What the? Every ounce of color is drained from his face. Give it here. Give it to me now. It's mine. I inherited it. What was that, witness? What did you say? You inherited it. No, What's this all about? He inherited that key? It was obviously important to you since you'd gone to such lengths to hide it, so I took it. I don't know what it's for, but you took something precious from me, so I took something precious from you. So what if it means you can't open something now? I don't care. Give it back this minute! Give it to me! Calm yourself, witness. So Mr. Shamspears tried, and in one case succeeded, to take the life of 2 lodgers now. Yes, his motive for doing so is the key to everything that's happened. It's true that there appears to be no motive to support the accusation against Mr. Shamspear at first, but considering everything we now know, I think there's actually something that could explain it. What? I think I know what this is. I need to recall every piece of evidence at our disposal. Everything we've seen and heard. Because I'm sure that I just caught a glimpse of the link that runs through all of these events. In that case, counsel, I must demand that you present evidence to the court in support of your claim. What is that you say you can explain the motivation for Mr. Shamspear's alleged crimes? Might be this. It might be the key to finding the 1,000 pounds of loot he stole. That Selden stole.
Take that!
That's an official police report, is it not? The Selden file. How did you get a hold of that? Selden. Now, sadly deceased Mr. Ross and the defendant, Mr. Natsume, have only one thing linking them. The fact that they had lodgings in the same room. Well, yes, we know this, certainly. Oh, and that's why Mr. Shamspear wanted that room so badly. He wanted to go in there and find the loot, which is probably hiding in that room. A room that was formerly occupied by Selden. Until, that is, he was arrested by Scotland Yard for his involvement in multiple burglaries. And murder! We're gonna just gloss over the murder? Okay. I see. It so happens that the convict Selden left behind... It so happens that the convict Selden left behind one very substantial mystery when he died. The sum 1,000 pounds worth of loot that he stole, which as yet remains to be found. Ah, yes, of course, it's coming back to me now. It's written in his file here. 1,000 pounds lost en route to hell. That was how the papers summoned it up. It seemed that one particular fellow inmate was with the convict in his final moments. It's not hard to imagine Selden entrusting that inmate with his most closely guarded secret. The location of the stolen loot, and perhaps a key to unlock whatever container the valuables were in. You mean this key is... Mr. Shamspear, it was you, wasn't it? You were at the capital offender's side when he died, were you not? Oh, what are you talking about? This is a false charge, I tell you. A false charge! The name of the inmate who was with Selden at his death isn't noted in this file, but a simple telegram to the prison where he died would quickly tell us how false that charge really is. But even if it's true, why would the men be so intent on killing every subsequent occupant of the convicts' lodgings? There's only one explanation for that, my lord. It was in that very room that Selden hid his loot. So it all comes out. Yes, and having established that, all of Mr. Shamspeare's subsequent actions start to make perfect sense. When he was let out of prison following Selden's death, he made immediately for Mr. Garadeb's lodgings in the hope of renting Selden's old room. However, the retired army man was unable to offer that accommodation of his choice, because Selden's old room had already been let to somebody else, Mr. Duncan Ross. Which is why Mr. Shamspeare subsequently devised his gas-based plot to kill the occupant of the room. And when he was successful, he presumably intended to inquire about switching into the newly vacant room. However, a certain jittery someone had been beating him to it. Mr. Soseki Natsume, the defendant of this case, no less. So you decided to use the ploy with the gas again, didn't you, Mr. Shamspeare? This time to oust Mr. Natsume. All for one simple and avaricious reason. To get your hands on the 1,000 pounds of loot left behind by the dead convict. Looks like I'm going to snuff it before they get it to stretch me neck. Listen, this is Selden. Listen, I want you to have me loot, anything, to stop the coppers getting their mitts on it. It's hidden in the room where I was lodging when they got me. Here, this is the key to it. Take it. Always stay one step ahead, mate. See you in hell, I guess. Shamspeare. It's mine. What did he just say? It's mine. That loot is mine. Mr. Shamspeare? It's all lies. I don't accept any of it. Why should I? After all, you don't have a shred of evidence. You can't prove I killed that fellow. Forsooth, I'm the victim here, remember? Isn't that right, ladies and gentlemen? If I don't admit it, there's nothing you can do. You can't arrest me. For the time being, anyway. Verily, you can't arrest the victim, can you? Isn't that right, ladies and gentlemen? I'm so close. I just need a few more hours. I swore to myself that I'd get my hands on it. And I can almost taste it now. Do you really think I'd just give up? There's no question in my mind now. That man is guilty through and through. But he seems so utterly intoxicated by the idea of that loot. I'm afraid that however hard you press him, he'll never admit to what he's done, Mr. Naruhodo. There is a way. Pardon? There's one way I can finish him. No! He's already committed the most heinous crimes to get his hands on the loot, which means all we need to do is find it first. A fine plan, were it not for the fact that the police thoroughly searched the room following the death of Mr. Ross. If it's there at all, it must be very well hidden indeed. Without conclusive evidence, I certainly cannot rule. If only there was some way we could find the convict's loot quickly. This is the final piece in this complex puzzle, but I think we might have it in our possession already. Or rather, I think we may well have something that can help us find where that loot is hidden. My lord? Yes, counsel? The defense would like to make a proposal about how to find the late convict's hidden loot. I believe we are already in possession of something that could give us a clue as to its whereabouts. It's our last chance, so it has to be worth a gamble. Besides, we've used the same technique once already, and it definitely paid off then. Very well then, counsel. Let the court hear your idea. What do you propose we can use in order to locate the hiding place of the deceased convict's hall? Where is this? Where's the stuff? I guess we could just use the photo of the prince.
Take that!
If I'm not mistaken, those are Mr. Shemspeare's handprints on the wall of his lodgings. That's right, my lord. Exposed as a result of the defense's independent investigation of the scene. Based on a wonderful new discovery in the field of forensic science by the great detective Mr. Sholmes. A great detective? Is that some kind of joke? Do you really think I'm going to be daunted by a man with such ridiculous title? I should think the great bard ought to recognize such a title when he hears one, Mr. Shemspeare. Perhaps we should compete for the honor of most ridiculous title. Ah! 'Tis Herlock Sholmes himself! What are you doing here, great detective? Your usual haunts are the filthy back streets of the capital, are they not? Ah, Mr. Reaper, it's been too long. And I see your complexion has worsened since we last met. Mr. Sholmes! He does know Lord Van Zeeks, then. Well enough to say something like that, in any case. Mr. Sholmes, though you may be heralded as a great detective by the population at large, that does not give you the right to come and go in my courtroom as you see fit. If I may, my lord. Mr. Sholmes' newly developed scientific method has helped us to uncover vital clues in this case already. Clues, you say? I call them skin prints, my lord. My method identifies every location touched by an individual under scrutiny. It's the method by which we were able to ascertain this... Excuse me. It's the method by which we were able to ascertain this gentleman's gas pipe activities. Ah! You need only a small sample of something the individual has previously touched to make an indicator solution. In your case, sir, I used the teacup you had been holding. Elementary. So now, Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, yes? What am I to use as a sample to make the indicator solution this time? Burger. Hey, Yashi, how you doing? Thank you for offering to help, Mr. Sholmes. When the convict was arrested, he was living in what is now Soseki-san's room. We need a sample to locate Selden's loot that was hidden in his old room. What form will the sample take? You're hungry? I ate so much today because it was Easter Sunday, and now, to be honest, I am getting kind of peckish again because that was like 6 hours ago. But I'll wait until I'm done streaming. We'll need something of Selden's in order to create the indicator solution to find his loot. And something the convict owned happens to be in the possession of somebody listed in the court record. Upon my word, Mr. Naruhodo, your powers of reasoning appear to be on the up. So, which particular person do you have in mind? Why wait? Because I'm streaming. From who can we obtain a possession of the late convict Selden to create an indicator solution? I believe there's an achievement if you pick the wrong person here.
Take that!
And what, pray, does said person possess that could be applicable to our purpose? Let's hear your new and improved powers of reasoning at work, my dear fellow. Dear me, your left eye just twitched. Are you currently concocting an elaborate excuse? Not some clever Japanese joke about a wet noodle, I hope. Ah, you got me. The noodler. We noodlin'. I think we need to reconsider this from the start, Mr. Naruhodo. Why do I feel as though Sasato-san is studying my left eye now? I'm ready and waiting, Mr. Naruhodo. The rest is in your hands.
Take that!
Miss Green. Ah, me? What do you want with me? The key around your neck, if you please. Sorry? That key belonged to Selden. There will be remnants of secretions from the man's skin on the surface that we could use. He's skidera skidoo. Very true. Whack. That is a sample we need. Using it, we could create the indicator solution required for Mr. Sholmes' skin print seeker. And find out exactly what Selden touched in the room that he used to rent. Mr. Shamspear is one great to another, I assure you. If the late convict's hall is hidden somewhere in his former lodgings, I shall uncover it in no more than 30 minutes. So, Mr. Shamspear, the truth is well within our grasp now, and as such, you will never get your hands on Selden's stolen wealth. In that case, I'll gladly let Mr. Sholmes have this key. No, give the key to me! Detective shan't have it! Into creating evidence, yeah. It's over, Mr. Shamspear. No. No! You're out of options now. There's only one thing left for you to do. Admit your guilt. Whoa! Oh, shameful spear! Despair! Be thy name! Whoa. He exploded. He just double jumped. Yeah, he double jumped and exploded. I never intended to kill the man. I just wanted to drive him out of the room. That's all. So you'd have time to find the convict's haul of stolen goods. But after you killed the young man, you still didn't move into the room. I asked the landlord, of course. I pleaded with him, but he refused. Why? I was 3 months behind with the rent, for one thing. Mr. Garrett really has a lot to put up with here. And he had the gas repair done work immediately afterwards, putting the room out of action for a while. And then, this Japanese man swooped in at just the right moment to sign the new lease. Poor Mr. Natsume, what an unfortunate timing. Then, 5 days ago, after the incident on Briar Road when the Japanese fellow got himself arrested, I thought I'd finally have my chance, but it wasn't to be. No, the scene was sealed off and guarded by the police night and day. And if I remember rightly, Mr. Sholmes spent the whole day in there reading books. I couldn't even enter the room, let alone search for the loot. Which is why on the day Mr. Natsume was acquitted and returned to his room, you once again tried your trick of blowing air into the gas pipe that feeds the stove in his room. Unbeknownst to you, however, that action would lead you into a deadly trap. William Shamspear, how does it go? To be or not to be, that is the question. From Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. Well, let me tell you, in your case, it's not to be. That is the answer. You deserve to die for what you've done. Like, they keep the running theme of short people having to stand on boxes. At first, I really did think it was just a terrible accident. I'll never forget our conversation the night before Duncan Ross died. I don't know why she would say his last name. The gas supplies in my new lodgings are a complete disaster, you know, Olive. The gas supply? Yes, the stove always seems to go out in the middle of the night for some reason. That's no joke. They say it's the convict's curse. Oh, Duncan, please, don't stay there. I don't care how cheap it is. Alright then, if it's that important to you, I'll start looking for a new place. There's spare rooms at my house. Why don't you leave that horrible room tonight? No, I'd better not. We said we'd wait until we graduated before we told our parents, remember? Oh, that's so upsetting. But that was the last time we ever spoke. That very night, he fell victim to the gas. If only I had known it was going to happen, I'd have insisted he left that horrible room this instant. But instead, all I've been left with is bitter regret. I stopped going to school, but something kept drawing me back to the house on Briar Road. I saw a stooped Eastern-looking man with a mustache coming out of the house one day while I was there. He walked up the road to Grubb's Grubbery for some food, so I followed him, and sat myself down next to him. He had some watery-looking soup and started to pick a quarrel with the publican. I don't know what that... Oh. That place is cursed, I tell you! Cursed! The ghost of that convict who used to live there is trying to suffocate me! I wake up in the middle of the night, freezing to death because the stove has gone out. The room is full of gas and I can hardly breathe. Got an apple patty and a sausage, nice. But the pipes have been checked, no problem there. It's like I'm the problem, that's what they're thinking. But how could that be? Duncan was gone and now this man had almost suffered the same fate. Could it really be a curse? And I remembered a rumor I had heard about how the gas companies go around investigating the gas installations. A rumor? Oh, you mean... Yes, everybody's heard the stories, it seems, about how they go around checking the pipes. How anything connected to the gas can be extinguished by blowing air into the pipework. That's when it started. A little flicker of doubt in the back of my mind that just wouldn't go away. Was it really an accident, though? Once I had the idea, it wouldn't leave me alone. It plagued me day and night. So I bought this at one of the black markets in the East End. Black market? I'd never been. I just heard people talk about them. And you really can buy anything you can think of there. In some ways, being able to get my hands on this so easily made me even more determined. I had to find out one way or another. Was Duncan's death an accident? Or was it murder? And your chosen method for establishing the truth was simple, but highly effective. Smear poison on the gas pipe you suspect the men of tampering with, and wait. If Mr. Shamspeare was innocent, nothing would come of what you've done. But if he was guilty, he would pay for his crimes dearly. I found out the name of the man I suspected. William Shamspeare. And then I wrote him this little note. I have information regarding the death of Duncan Ross. Come to the Slug and Salad on Briar Road at 5 p.m. on the 17th. Don't tell anybody else about this letter or the meeting. It is a matter of utmost importance. If he'd done it, I knew that would worry him enough so he'd be sure to go. So I waited to see if it worked. And of course, Mr. Shamspeare followed the instructions to the letter. I worked out where the gas pipe was straight away. So I smeared a good amount of the poison I'd brought all around the mouth of the pipe. All the time praying that the devil's work wouldn't be done, and it was all just some wild fantasy. Actually, no. All the time praying that the devil's work would be done, and that the culprit would get his just desserts. Deserts? That's not right. That's not right. Dessert is two S's. Dessert is two S's. Desert is one S. Unless that's just how it is in Euro English. I mean, yeah, she's guilty and that sucks, but at the same time, she didn't kill anyone. Shamspeare's the real murderer, so... Is she making a sweet joke? I don't know why she would make a joke there. 3 days ago, when you were first stood in the dock before me, this whole affair seemed relatively straightforward. Yes, my lord. I certainly never imagined the depths of depravity that we have subsequently found lurking behind the scenes. It has been a long road, my Nipponese friend. Oh, yes. And one I certainly didn't envisage I walking with you. Nevertheless, together we've reached the light at the end of the tunnel, as it were. Miss Green? Yes, my lord? You will henceforth be stripped of your freedom, as punishment for the attempted murder of Mr. William Shamspeare. Yes, I know. And you, Mr. Shamspeare, you will be tried for the murder of Mr. Duncan Ross in cold blood, and the subsequent attempted murder of Mr. Soseki Natsume here present. Mr. Naruhodo. Ah, yes? Yesterday, at the hospital, when you and your friends stopped me from ending your life by drinking what was left in the poison bottle, I wasn't myself. I can't even really remember what was going through my mind. To be or not to be, I suppose. That's a question that's so hard to answer, it seems. Well, personally, I'm glad of your being here, Miss Green. Oh! And I'd like to believe that's a blessing Mr. Shamspeare didn't die when he ingested the poison. For your sake, at the very least. Because of you, I chose life, not death. And now, you've made the truth come out at last. Really, I can't thank you enough. Oh, Miss Green. Mr. Soseki Natsume. Yes, my lord. The court declares that you are exonerated from all blame in this matter. Accordingly, I would like to call upon the ladies and gentlemen of the jury to present a verdict of not guilty. We're in full agreement, my lord. In that case, I hereby declare the defendant... Hell yeah. The helper already got in a set. The victim of this case actually killed someone. Yeah. Court is adjourned. Yeah, this fire. Don't question it. That's just an Ace Attorney thing. 23rd February, 3:24 p.m. The Old Bailey Defendant's Antechamber. Antechamber? An ant chamber sounds very unpleasant. I don't want to be covered in ants. Oh, yes, yes, at last. Divine justice duly done. Divine justice? My dear fellow, if there were any divine justice in this world, you would shave that mustache. No, this has nothing to do with my mustache. Some say that a luxuriant mustache is a sign of physical prowess, Mr. Sholmes. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, once again, you've saved me from doom. I'm very happy to have been able to help, Mr. Natsume. Congratulations on your acquittal. Your second in almost as many days. I was first acquainted with and gained affection for English literature whilst in our great homeland empire. And then, by a twist of fate, I was brought to the land that bore the fruit of that literature. Only, the city of bricks and mortar became my prison. Try as I might, I never found my feet here. In the end, I confined myself to my room and lived life through friendly old books. You've had such a difficult time, haven't you? Ah, but a week ago now, I dragged you out of that dark and dingy room of yours, did I not? You did, and I've seen more of life in this week than in all my years to date. And for the first time, I feel I've begun to see the true face of the English that's so far been hiding from me behind the wall of fog. My dear fellow, there is nothing more special about the true face of the English, as you put it. Wherever one goes in the world, humans are human. There are few genuine differences. Yes, I think you're right. I finally started to see that, and I've come to understand something. Duck? No, it's a macaw. It's a parrot. my emote slot. By the way, I have a ton more emote slots. I need to get more. I need to, like, implement more into the stream. I've worked out why I was so attracted to English literature in the first place. It made me see that whatever our nationality, we humans all have the same hopes and fears. We're all just doing our best to live. Well said. I've come to feel the same way. A ferret? No, a parrot. A macaw. Like my name. I've made a decision, too. I'm going to cut short my study tour here and return to Japan. What? Just when we become friends here in England. What a terrible shame. Oh, I know, that does tug at my heartstrings, it really does. But I've decided I'd like to take everything I've learned here in Britain and write something of my own. You thought I was a chocobo? I mean, a lot of people have made that comparison. A novel of sorts, I suppose. Oh my, so you'll be creating your own literature, Mr. Natsume? How wonderful. Oh, well, no, I mean, I wouldn't presume to call it liminal spaces literature. Why not, when that is precisely the definition, Mr. Mustache? I suppose you're right, yes. It will, in a way, be literature. But as of now, all I know is that I'd like to try my hand at writing. I have no delusions of grandeur. I, for one, would love to read your work. Well, all things considered, it may be for the best. After all, you have once again emerged victorious from a battle with the Reaper. Ah, that's very true. And there's no salvation for a person in the dock when the Reaper's at the prosecutor. The desire to return post-haste to the perceived safety of your homeland is one I quite understand. My goodness, yes, faced with such a terrifying prospect. Nobody would consider that cowardly, I'm quite sure. But that's not why I'm leaving, I mean it! He objected. And that was the case that we found ourselves embroiled in 6 months ago now. Soseki-san did indeed return to Japan and submitted a report about both cases to the government. It was on reading that report that Professor Miko Toba was prompted to visit the scholar. And barely any time later, Susato-san was given the news that she must return to Japan as well. On the back of a telegram stating falsely that her father had fallen gravely ill. The only possible explanation that comes to mind is what happened after the trial on the following day, the day that we uncovered the loot hidden by the now-deceased convict in his former lodgings. February 24th, 10:13 a.m. Mr. Natsume's lodgings. Oh, well done, Mr. Sholmes. How simply marvelous of you. To uncover the secret hiding place in just one day. Was it supposed to take 30 minutes? Called dibs on the cat figure, the lucky cat. There's an actual cat. As I believe I've told you, my dear fellow, skin prints are extremely useful in such situations. Wouldn't you agree, Gregson? Gregsy's been happily munching in agreement this whole time, you know, Hurley. Happily? I think perhaps humorously might be closer to the truth. So it transpires the man fashioned a hiding place in the ceiling. Yes, he's eating fish and chips. And what's in it? What exactly is the loot? Let us look then, if you're ready. Let's examine the late burglar's haul. The burglars. What is that? A blood-stained wristband? Looks to be some sort of neckband or collar. A collar? It's huge, though! And look at all the gemstones set in it. I could see why it was claimed to be worth 1,000 pounds. Perhaps I could have it as a belt. Oh, have you noticed on the inside there? There are some dark stains. You don't think they could be blood, do you? I mean, there's quite a lot of it. On second thoughts, perhaps I won't have it as a belt. Then, of course, there's this emblem here. Oh, you saw my friend playing Chrono Cross. I have it. I didn't buy it off the eShop because I'm not in the mood to play it now, but I am importing a physical version of the game for Switch, which does have the English translation in it, so it's cool. Just gonna come later. A large letter B and a small crown. What does it signify, do you think? Oh, I hadn't noticed that. I feel as though I've seen that emblem somewhere before, you know? Where could it have been? It's just a stain that's not gonna be used. Yeah, but if it's blood, why would you want to wear it? That's enough of that, I think. What's the matter with Mr. Sholmes? All the color is drained from his face. Well, Inspector, I believe you ought to be taking this, oughtn't you? It could be valuable evidence, after all. It must be kept safely under lock and key. Yeah. Get your grubby hands off that, you lot. Hand it over, now. I'd never seen a collar that large before, and all those jewels certainly look to be extremely valuable. But that's not what stood out the most to me. At least not once I'd noticed it. Those dark marks on the inside of the collar. Those stains. Could they really have been blood? How did the chips not fall with that motion? Ace Attorney logic. Well, that was a funny case, wasn't it? But it's all buttoned up now. And you look very pleased, Iris. I am, because I was starting to wonder what I could use as the basis of this month's story in the magazine. But this case will be perfect. It's been so fascinating. You're talking about the latest installment of the Adventures of Sherlock Sholmes, I presume. The mystery of the knife in the mist, and the mustached man in the convict's curse, perhaps. I can make it a two-part story. Oh, I can't wait. A word, please, Iris. Yes, what is it, Hurley? I'm sorry, but you can't write about this case. It's out of the question. What? Why not? It's a great case. Then I shall have to insist that you limit yourself to the first of your two titles. The second must never be written. Is that clear? Yes.
And so it was that the second of Souseki-san's cases became buried in obscurity. Now, looking back, I feel I understand. I can see why Mr. Sholmes forbade Iris from publishing the story. It would take a little longer before I saw the link between everything that had happened and would happen. For it wasn't until 2 months after the arrival of Susato-san's letter that events began to unfurl again.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I kicked my mic into audition mode. That's why I sound so different right there.
With an incident that took place at the very heart of the eagerly awaited Great Exhibition of London.
See, like, when I activate that, I sound way more professional, and I actually sound like a voice actor. But I have to... It only works for a few seconds at a time, so I have to flip it on and off each line. Neat. Yes, very neat indeed. Key of Knowledge awarded. Alright, so we're gonna start episode 3. The Return of the Great Departed Soul, but not yet. Give me a minute. First things first. No. No. Stop. Alright, I'm gonna pick the second episode again. Because there's a piece of dialogue I missed in order to get an achievement. Yeah, skip this, please. Get it out of here. We don't want it. There's 2 games? Yes, this is a collection of both games. Wow. Yow. Oh. Oh, this is when he gets really close to the screen. Yeah, get away. It's gonna be about 3 hours tonight, 4.5 tomorrow, and 4.5 on maybe even more than 4.5 on Tuesday. But my goal is to get through chapter 3 before the end of Tuesday. All right, so they don't tell you that you could do this, but you have to come back here and look at the spade. The office spade. Now that Sasato's gone, the shovelers aren't represented to correct me. Maybe I'll have to do it myself. That's not a spade, Naruhodo-san, it's a shovel. There's so much stuff up here compared to, before. Never did see what Sasato-san's room looked like. I'd go in now, of course, but I don't dare. They say a young maiden's private chamber is a place of bittersweet secrets. Although from the laughter I used to hear when Iris would visit, I imagine it's mainly sweet. I'm gonna save it in the bottom slot here. Okay, I think that's all I missed in this chapter. That's the only thing I had to do that I didn't do. Chains with secrets, yeah. So I still have to do Iris and Sasato. Okay. Wow, there's a lot here. So this chapter I have to do it twice with Sasato when it shows up, and once with Iris. And then next chapter I have to do it once with Sasato as well. This, I believe, yeah, this is both in this chapter as well. So is this, so I gotta do that too. And as well as this. So if I do everything right, I should get this, this, and this chapter. And I'm also gonna get this, but not tonight. I'll do that tomorrow. So, oh, load game. Oh my god. Alright, I'm gonna take a short break and I will be right back. I think what I might do is I might actually do a separate recording for episode 3, just so I'm not having them overlap like I did in the first game. But I have to go, I have to use the restroom and take care of a few things. I might go get a snack too. So stick around, I'll be back in just a moment, and with more Great Ace Attorney 2.